Hey everyone, so before we get into today's episode, just want to bring you guys a bunch of community updates. First and foremost, we are restarting the community Zooms next Tuesday on November 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Honestly, I'm so excited to just start these again. We took a little bit of a break just to focus on building the podcast, but we are back and we are ready to bring the community together. We know that there's a lot of you in a lot of different time zones, so if this time doesn't work, let us know if there's a specific time that does work, because ultimately we will be adding more times to host these Zooms as we continue to grow so that we can accommodate all of our listeners and really get a chance to speak to you guys. So the Zooms will be every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's a really great chance just to get involved in the community, whether you have any specific questions you want to talk through, or just talk to Daisy and I, or talk to other members in the community. We always have very insightful, thought-provoking conversations that always end up making you feel less alone. So community Zooms, register now, link in our show notes. Second community update, if you're in Austin, Texas, next Tuesday, same date, 7:30 a.m., I'm hosting a walking meditation. I'm super excited for this. It's going to be really awesome, I think, to get people together before work so everybody can move outside their minds and get a little walking meditation in. So if you're going to be in the area, definitely stop by. You can register using the link in our show notes. And for the third community update, I'm super excited because Daisy and I are going to be back in New York City. We are co-hosting an event on November 17th at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. We are still finalizing the details, so keep an eye out for that. But if you're in the area, we would love to see you guys. It's going to be a really cool curated event. Keep an eye out for that on our Instagram or in our newsletter or on our website. I'm really excited for everything coming up. We're going to keep expanding, keep adding more events online and in person. So if you guys can't make any of these, no worries. We will definitely see you at one of them at some point. All right, so that's it on the community updates, and let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Life Unpotted. We're happy you're here today, and we're gonna get into today's episode. So I guess I'll just start talking because that's where I'm at today. Like, honestly, we have had a discussion before doing this episode, and if you were a fan of Daisy Has an Anxiety Spiral, then you'll probably be a fan of this episode because I can't really just fake where I'm at emotionally for this podcast episode. And I was having a lot of judgment before we podcasted about, you know, there's literally a war going on. Like, who gives a shit how I feel? Who gives a shit if I feel sad or if I don't feel good or if I feel upset? And the reality is that all of this is happening at once. All of these things happen, and it doesn't mean that you can't give yourself love. And I think at the end of the day, what it always comes back to is that it's really hard, maybe harder for me than others, to give ourselves that love and kindness. And I'm not there right now. I'm full of self-hatred, and I'm just going to be honest about that because maybe some of you can relate to that, and maybe talking about it will help loosen up the grip I have on my heart right now and how I'm holding it very tightly. And this has all got me thinking about the way that we interact with the world, and not only us, but really how our emotions interact with the world, and the subconscious expectation that we're always going to be happy and in a good mood, like the service at Chick-fil-A, that we should always be like that, you know what I mean? And that's just not sustainable. And I think that what that taught me, like as a child and as an adult into my later years of now, is that if I'm not feeling good, then my entire world has to shut down, that I don't know how to cope through negative emotions, quote unquote negative emotions and big emotions, that everything has to come to a screeching halt, and that I have to hold myself away from the world and stop my world altogether. And when I'm feeling really good, great, go out. But when you're not feeling good, don't show the world that. And even as someone who has a podcast trying to normalize the human spectrum of emotions, I still judge the shit out of myself for when I don't feel good, of being like, well, who are you to not feel good? Why don't you feel great? Your life is totally fine. There is much more suffering in the world. Even I get stuck into these thought loops, these hamster wheel of thoughts of really just an excuse to hate myself, because the reality is that when we don't allow ourselves to feel these big feelings, the secondary emotion of anger comes up. And this is what happens for me. And that gets directed towards myself. And it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need to lose 5 pounds. My face is really puffy. I have all of these issues in my life. I have this happening and that happening. I don't have any new clothes. I look like a piece of shit. Like all of these things truly come up, and I can have the awareness to recognize that these things aren't true. It's just my mind creating these things, but it's so easy. And I haven't been stuck in this, and it reminded me of how I've spent a lot of my life. The pain of the cycle of being stuck in it, of the anxiety cycle, truly of not being able to get out of it, of being in a dark place. I think that I hate how it's something that it feels shameful to even talk about, because what is healing if we can't express these things? How does healing happen if we can't express these things? And I think a misconception that I've had for a very long time was that if I'm always talking about my emotions, then get a better hobby, like move on with your life. Like, why are you so stuck and just mulling over and obsessing over yourself and how you're feeling? And obviously those are all my insecurities coming up, and my more aware self can recognize that, well, how are we going to move forward and be free if we don't work through these things? So I just wanted to further talk in this episode today for those of you who have ever felt like you're in a constant cycle of self-hatred, if you ever have felt like shameful of how you're feeling and like you can't bring that out. I think that it's important to have candid conversations here about just the reality of that, feeling less alone in that, because you know what? As soon as we accept and stop resisting these extreme big feelings, we're able to move on. And to the person inside of me who's saying, be more productive, get a life, contribute to society, I can say to that person in my mind, well, isn't going through our emotions the best way to do that? So that we can actually live a full life. And, you know, speaking of wars and all of these horrible things that we have done as humans to other humans, all the suffering we've caused, well, isn't that just anger playing out? I really think that it's so important to talk about our emotions and to create space in society to feel our emotions, and at the end of the day, just be there for ourselves, because if we don't, we're going to project this onto other people. And imagine, you know, you're having a bad day and you say something really shitty to your mom or your partner or your best friend, or you do something really shitty. Imagine you are someone who is in an extreme level of power and you're having the same kind of day. How do you think that's going to play out? Do you really think that it's just women who fall victim to their emotions? No, it's like men all the time also fall victim to their emotions. It just placates its anger and it's causing suffering to other people. So that might be a hot take, but it's not, because it's just reality. We are all entirely dictated by our emotions. So it's something to talk about when we're not feeling good. And I'm certainly in an interesting place for this conversation, but why not just put myself up there so we can debunk this idea that we aren't allowed to feel not great and how we can't express that, because we're all just trying to move forward, right? So I think getting soft is the place to start.
What a beautiful introduction. It's interesting how feeling your emotions can turn into such beautiful insight. And oftentimes when we're going through, like you said, a dark time, I'm in a dark place, a phrase that's often used.
Well, tell me why there's so much stigma. Or like, just hearing you say that, like, oh, in a dark place, you think like you need to call the lifeline number to make sure they're okay. It's like, why does like someone being in a dark place have to be this big thing where we can't oftentimes visit the dark place and then come out of it? Why does it have to be so stigmatized to be in a quote unquote dark place, that where you're afraid of your reputation being ruined if you're happening to be in a dark place? But exactly what you're saying, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so much inspiration can come from acknowledging these feelings, and so much creativity can come from it as well.
Well, what I was going to say is kind of read my mind. I was going to say, why do we even refer to it as a dark place? Like, when we historically as a society have talked about our emotions, it's always been from a very extreme viewpoint. Either you're feeling really good, and the term happy was coined, that I think kind of has been the term that we've all used. Oh, I want to be happier. Oh, this makes me happy. This doesn't make me happy. And if you're not happy, where do you fall? We hear the word depression often. Oh, depressed. Oh, she's depressed. Oh, mental health issues. Okay. We're viewing the emotions from such an extreme way. And what I really realized after taking mushrooms is that, so think of your life as if it was a giant house, and within that house you have different rooms, right? Say you have 20 rooms. Up until a certain point, you really probably only entered one or two of those rooms. What does that mean? Well, when I took mushrooms, like, there was rooms where I found myself in and I felt extremely scared. I felt extremely uncomfortable because I was feeling so many emotions that I had never felt before. And it's almost like opening up the door to that room and you see a scary monster or something that startles you, and you jump. You're like, like, how did I want to leave? I want to leave immediately. And I think what I realized from taking mushrooms and just on this journey is, like, that monster is just our own mind resisting entering those rooms. It's from years and years of us not really being given the space to feel, growing up in a society where we really, like, you go to school, you go to work, especially the workplace, like, holy shit. I mean, you are expected, especially coming out of the corporate world, like, you better be ready to show up. There's no room to feel anything but ready and productive and energized. And I think there's a lot of organizations now that actually specialize into bringing mindfulness into the workplace, which I think is a beautiful thing to do, because in order to have productive employees, you have to be letting them feel their emotions, or at least have a space where they can feel comfortable doing so. But just going back to, like, the concept of dark, I'm in a dark place, like, when we remove that label, we're going to really just find that the place you're just in is just feeling the emotions you've suppressed. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I think the more that we can just learn to feel sadness on a normal day basis, or feel pain or feel grief, without having to label that as I'm in a dark place, or I'm depressed, or I'm just not doing well, or I'm not okay. Recognizing that a lot of that label is coming from us resisting the fact and thinking we shouldn't feel those feelings, when in reality, like you said, Daisy, like, those feelings are always there, and feeling them is the only way forward. It's the only way to freedom.
Well, it's really interesting because there's two ways to look at it. When you're feeling upset and angry, you can be nice to yourself and you can bring that whole version of yourself. Oftentimes people like that version of yourself, and there's a great leadership tactic, I think, when you're able to bring that full version of yourself. And, you may not be someone who is what you may think of as the quintessential leader, but I mean, look at where we are in our world, how we had great leaders. I don't know. But the second way is that you can totally beat yourself to shit, and you can be fucking mean to yourself. You can be really awful. Think of it when you're driving, how aggressive people are to you if you turn too quick, or if you don't go past the red light immediately. Think of all the middle fingers you've ever been flipped off, or the horns that have been honked, or the people who have passed you aggressively. Every one of those people who has done that to you, they're first and foremost doing it to themselves. And I think that just paints a picture of just how many people are denying themselves of feeling what they actually want to feel. And I think it's more normalized to feel meh and numb than it is to feel I'm not good, I'm bad, I'm actually having a really awful day. Like, when was the last time someone said that to you? When you walked into a Starbucks or a CVS or something, right? It's not acceptable for us to say those things to each other. It's not acceptable. And I think even on this podcast, Sophie's in a typical, normal, nice, happy mood. And I'm clearly here, like, feeling very, very raw and very vulnerable. And I think the reason why I was feeling kind of, I don't want to say triggered, but insecure, the fact that Sophie was coming off so fine, was because, well, if she's acting like that and she's fine and I'm coming off raw, does that mean that something's wrong with me? Like, I think we're really told that if we don't feel great, if we're not having a great day, like think about like when you're a kid, if the teacher wants to talk to your parent because you're not doing great, that's scary. What? Something's wrong with me. So I think that's just part of the reason why we deny ourselves to feel the emotions that we're actually feeling when they're not positive. Because the reality is that we have so much shame with our emotions when they're negative. But it's also interesting because before we started podcasting, I was resisting the shit out of my emotions. I was like resisting coming onto this podcast and right now and feeling the way that I am. But now that we've been doing this for 15-ish minutes, it's forced me to soften. And I think that's a powerful place to be because I'm not going to be angry right now. And I'm not going to be mean. I'm just going to feel what I'm feeling. And that's not causing pain for anyone. That's actually love. And there's love there. So isn't that more powerful? Why would it be shameful to feel bad if the root of that is actually just love? Like, how can we be shameful about these emotions we don't feel if in reality, if the way we're handling them is with love for ourselves, how is that shameful if we're able to soften like that? Why are we so afraid? Is it that something's wrong with us, that we're damaged, that we're not okay? Why is that bad? When the alternative is to quite literally flip someone off when you're driving, honk the horn, get in a car accident, actually speed up when you're walking, because I've experienced that in New York when you shouldn't be walking and people speed up and they try to hit you. Where does that come from? It's the denying of the actual emotions and love that we want to give to ourselves, but we're deemed that we're not welcome, but we're deemed that something's wrong with us if we actually decide to do that.
This is really making me think of like being a kid and just hearing my mom being like, "Oh, Sophie, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? Like, did something happen? Like, oh, like you don't feel good? Oh no, like let's fix that. Let's fix that." This narrative, I think that we are really taught that like when you don't feel good, put the Band-Aid on it. When you don't feel good, go to the doctor. When you feel sad, how can we make you feel better? What show can we put on to cheer you up? Cheer you up. It's always about cheering you up. And just like I just think of my childhood and I think of just a regular, just being anyone being a human on this planet, and like you grow up and like it's like we are so outward facing in the sense of like this illusion that we live in, that we all get ready in the morning and we go to work and we pretend and we put on these masks to be someone. And I think like let's go deeper on this. Like when you think about society and we think about the quote unquote system, right? I think one realization I had from taking mushrooms is that like we are the system. We are society. Like you, the listener, you are society. We often view it as, okay, obviously there is a financial system and certain people have more money and they hold higher positions of power, but they are just people. Like when you peel back the layers of the vision, you recognize that billions and billions of years ago, the planet formed and we've all evolved and we're somehow now here. So when we think about wanting society to change, we have two choices. We can sit here and say, the world sucks, society sucks. Like, why is it like this? Or we can recognize that we are society. We are the world. So I think it's often easy to feel like you can't make a difference because the world is so big and there's so many things. And I often have felt this way with like things like climate change, of just helpless. Like, how can I start? How can I make a difference? And I think the difference really comes from recognizing that every single interaction that you have in this world is causing a ripple effect. So if you go to the grocery store and you're nice to the cashier versus being a complete asshole or just giving them like a bad look or just whatever, being frustrated, like that person will then go home and that will have impacted their day, and that's how they're going to treat their partner, and that's how their partner will then go to their job and their kid. And we don't realize the domino effect that we all have, and we really realize it when we realize that we're all connected. So how do we change the world? What we have to realize is the only way to change the world is to change ourselves, and the only way to change ourselves is to change the way that we interact with ourselves, because that is the foundation to how we interact with everyone else.
So that picture you painted of the cashier getting treated poorly by a customer and that chain following on, it made me think of instances where I have felt the way I feel now, which is kind of surrendering to the negative emotions that I feel, and that allowing me to actually feel greatly and give love to myself, which ultimately allows me to give love to other people. And makes me think of when we got a ticket yesterday. Not yesterday, but a few days ago. I don't know. I think we got a ticket. I was downtown Austin. I dropped Sophie off and I was waiting to pick her up. And I was unknowingly parked in a bike lane. And there was this guy who was like a ticket writer. And he didn't even tell me that I was in the bike lane. He just started writing me a ticket. So I just rolled my window down and I asked if there was a problem. And he was pretty nasty to me. He was pretty angry, and I didn't respond or really react to it. I was just like, okay, I'll go. And he was just telling me to like move and get out. And I rolled my window back down. I was like, hey, like I'm sure being a ticket writer isn't the most exciting job. I'm sure it's a hard job, passing out tickets every day. Like, I hope that you have a good day. And, I don't really know how that impacted his day. I know he told me to get out and move after I said that. But maybe he did reflect on that. Maybe he didn't. But with the example Sophie made, I could have easily screamed back at him and be like, why the fuck are you writing me a ticket? When in reality, I was just like, this guy's hurting and he's projecting it onto me. And that's okay, because it can stop here. It can end with me. Maybe he can feel a little better. Maybe that comment of, I hope your day is okay. I hope it's better. Maybe that impacted him. Maybe it didn't. But all of that to be said, I feel like we're numb. I feel like we are all numb. And I was just reflecting recently on, I don't know who saw the Lego movie, but it kind of painted the picture. Think of like when you're a kid and people are like, what do you want to do? And people are like, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be an accountant. I don't know if kids say that, but paints the picture that life is so simple. Think of how you view life when you're a kid and you want to play house and you mimic the adults. And what you do is you get your coffee before work, you go to work, you come home, you make dinner. Like that's kind of the world we're taught as kids to see. Like that's it. And that world I feel is so small. We're not taught about the world of emotions and letting go of the idea of ourselves. And how crazy is it that we're on a spinning rock? These really deep existential questions, we're not posed those as a kid. Like I feel like we're taught to think this world is so small. And I don't know if that plays into, why we're numb, but it's that we shrink our worlds down to, even post-college when I was going into work, I thought that it was my job, it was my duty to be like ready and alert. So if I was feeling really shitty, if I wasn't feeling great, I'd just go get a coffee. I'd get another coffee. I'd pound the coffee because I'm like, oh, this is happy juice. This will make me happy. And it'll make me good at my job, because that's what life is. It's being happy and good at your job. And I really believed that for a long time. Like that was the purpose on this earth, was to be happy and have a good job and buy more things. And that's just not true. It's so much deeper than that, and we miss out on the opportunities to go deeper when all we really focus on is these little things. And we're hurting. I think we're all hurting, honestly. If we're numb, we're hurting, because we're meant to feel our emotions. And I feel like I have a little bit of insight just because you were here, Sophie, when I was talking to you. Like, we didn't know if we were going to podcast because I was resisting myself so much. I was so angry that I was feeling this way, that I was upset with myself that I could possibly not feel happy. And I think that just shows insight into like a larger problem of if we aren't allowing ourselves to feel the negative emotions, we're numb. And if we can't feel anything, then our worlds become very small. We don't realize how powerful we are. We don't realize that we can make a change, and we start to believe that. And we sacrifice ourselves and we settle on a very small life, and no one has to do that. We're all allowed to feel. We're all welcome to feel. And I think the older I get, at my ripe age of 28, is money is not the answer. Obviously, there's a level of creating comfort. Everyone wants to be able to buy the things they need and live a happy, safe life where they don't have to worry about money. Obviously, that is true. But if you take someone who is very wealthy and you take someone who is very comfortable financially with how they're living their life, from there it doesn't matter, because what really matters is, do you like what you're doing every day? Do you feel deeply connected? Do you feel like your life is purposeful? Do you feel like you're creating something meaningful on this earth? Do you feel happy? Do you have moments of happiness? Do you feel present? Are you feeling your emotions? I feel like that's the new currency of what your life is, because money is just a concept at the end of the day. Like, obviously allows us to buy really expensive, nice things at times or supply our basic needs for ourselves, but it will never supplement our need to feel our emotions. And I don't think a lot of the people in power in our world understand that, because we try to throw money at problems to fix it when it's so much deeper and actually a lot more simple, of just relaxing into our emotions and showing up for ourselves, honestly. So I can't believe we're already at 28 minutes of this episode.
I think you may have just talked for 10, but I think it's beautiful because that's the flow, right? Like, that's the flow we can tap into when we do feel how we're feeling. Like, you're saying so many insightful things. Like, my mind is like spinning of, I just had an insight of, do we get mad at ourselves when these feelings arise because we're mad we're not happy? Like, I think that's really, really deeply rooted to that pressure we've placed on ourselves our whole lives of, I have to be happy. Like, I have to be top of my class. I have to be popular. I have to be cool. I have to go to the best college. I need to have the best car. Like, that comparison hamster wheel we get stuck in, that starts with the education system and where you could be in the moment you are now. And I want to encourage the listener to take a moment to pause to wherever you are right now, and whether you're listening to this when you're working or cleaning or cooking or on a walk or working out or going to sleep, pause and take note of whatever age you are. For me, I'm 30 and I've been alive for 30 years. And in a lot of the way, I spent most of that time in the same cycles. I spent most of my time beating myself up, judging myself, comparing myself to others, striving and striving and striving. And it wasn't until recently that I realized I was just running away. And let's just say I live for another, 50 years. That's a lot of time. I'd be 80 years old, right? Like, that's not that much time. I've already lived 30 years. So who knows when your time is up? Who knows? And so I would tell you, the listener, to really think about, what do you want out of this life? How do you want to show up? How do you want to treat people? How do you want to treat the people that you meet at the supermarket or the people at your job? And most importantly, like, how do you want to treat yourself? What is it that you really want to accomplish? What is it that you really want to do? What impact do you really want to make? And I think if there's anything to take away from this episode, is that to get the answers to these questions, we have to soften. We can't look for the answers to these big questions of, why am I here and what am I supposed to do, through an angle of anger and frustration and trying to strive to be the most productive person and getting good grades and getting promoted. Like, we can't look to find out the truth of this existence by mechanisms that just keep us away from ourselves. So I'm glad that you made the decision, Daisy, to podcast, because I think I was feeling before, like, I'm not sure if we should, because you were feeling your emotions. Like, I'm going to even like correct myself from saying not feeling good, because that again is a label. Like, you were just feeling. And isn't that the goal of life at all times? Like, shouldn't we just be feeling? And should we ever not be feeling? Like, I don't know. I think that these two extremes of either I'm feeling really great or I'm feeling like shit just keeps us stuck in doing everything we can to just feel good, because the alternative of that is this label we've created to be something bad, when in reality that's just truth.
I'm not gonna lie, I was having a lot of thoughts through everything you were just saying, and I didn't want to be rude and hold my mic up because I wanted to give you the space to talk. But now I've forgotten a lot of those things I wanted to say, but that doesn't mean I can't still say something. So I think it's really beautiful when we can feel, because life becomes so small when we can't feel our emotions. But isn't feeling the most beautiful thing on this earth, right? Like, feeling is absolutely everything. Trees feel, like, I just like kind of thought of an analogy. Think of the rainbow. Now think of the rainbow with all of the different shades of red, all of the different shades of pink and green, light green, dark green, mid green, all of the greens in between both spectrums. That's like all of the colors in the world. Think of all of those colors. Imagine you as the viewer were looking at all of these colors, and all of a sudden, red became sinful, green became greedy, orange became wrong. Imagine slowly but surely all but a couple of the colors had a negative connotation with them. But imagine all of these colors slowly but surely lost their vibrancy, except for one or two. Imagine now going through the world and seeing life through just these two colors now. How does that impact your experience, your pleasure, your overall just positive experience? Funny how I say positive, right? But I feel like that's kind of what we've done with emotions. Are you happy or are you sad? All right, you're good? Okay, are you bad? Are you bad? Like, these are basic early age child understandings of how the world operates, but we still operate this way with this mindset of it's one way or the other way. We're so uncomfortable existing in the myriad of feelings, and that's also where the vibrancy and the beauty is when we can take all of it. So I think that that's something to think about when you wake up one day and you're not feeling excited. That's okay. That's fine. You don't have to change a single thing. Take care of yourself. Give love to yourself. Go about your day. Don't change who you are. Try to tap in to why you're feeling hurt or why you're feeling sad. Try to go deeper. I think the answer is always going deeper. And yeah, that's where the resistance comes in of like, oh, like my life is fine. I didn't have a hard life. I'm fine. I don't need to go into my emotions, which that's just so wrong. We all have to, no matter our life situations, right? We all deserve to go deeper. And I feel that resistance. I get it. I don't want to go deeper. I even feel the resistance of going deeper, even though I've already kind of let my guard down. But take it from me that as someone who was judging the shit out of themselves for wanting to work through my feelings and emotions because I thought it was selfish because I'm going to go put this on the internet, so who gives a shit how I'm feeling? Well, take it as an example of if I can work through that, so can you, and you can sink into yourself and you can give love to yourself, and you very much deserve to do so. You're not meant to always be happy or always just simply be sad. There's so many emotions in between all of this. There is a level of depth that comes with it, and you don't ever have to try to be anything because everything just is, and you're allowed to soften. You can soften at your job. You can soften during school. You can soften at being a parent. You can soften anywhere. And you know what? If you think that's selfish, it's only going to have a positive repercussion onto others. If I would have had my guard up, this episode wouldn't have happened. I was nice to myself, so this episode happened, and maybe it'll make someone feel less alone in what they're feeling. So I think the alternative is feeling numb. And when we feel numb, we feel sterilized. And that's like a dystopian universe. It's a dystopian future of not feeling anything, everything just being the same shade of gray. Why would we expect our emotions to just be the same shade of, I'm fine? Like, who wants to just be fine all the time? We're not meant to be fine all the time. We're meant to be happy. We're meant to be joyful, meant to be excited. We're meant to be depressed or angry and sad. But then the full spectrum continues to happen. So wouldn't you choose that over feeling meh and fine all the time?
Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful episode. I appreciate you making the decision to choose love with yourself. And like you said, like, I'm sure this episode will help a lot of people, because like, if we were to decide not to record it, wouldn't we be just feeding into that illusion of pretending that if you're not happy, you're not go, you're not cheery, that something's wrong with you? Like, no. So thanks, Stacey. So thank you for being true to yourself and not letting the anger win.
Yeah, I think I feel more tapped in. I feel more connected. And sure, I'm sure there's levels of resistance still coming up, but this was a great practice of settling into what I could be feeling that wasn't just sad or happy. I think practicing feeling anything is really helpful outside of the typical happy or sad. Like, we're allowed to feel, and we're allowed to voice that, and we're allowed to like say, I feel this way. That's all right. That's okay.
And for us, the vehicle that we are able to express these emotions is the podcast. And honestly, it is an art form. So how about you, the listener, think about, what is it in your life that you can use as a vehicle to feel? What is it in your life that you can allow yourself to fully embody that? Maybe that's, I think we could do that at all times, but there's certain things that do allow us to feel that. Maybe that's yoga. Maybe that's playing the guitar. Maybe that's drawing or painting or playing that sport. Like, learning how to embody what we're feeling in whatever we're doing. So as always, thank you guys so much for listening. I think this episode just serves as a reminder of, don't judge yourself for how you're feeling. Allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of emotions, because life can be, and life is, a lot more beautiful when we're not getting in our own way. Because the reality of it is only us. It is only you who is getting in your way. And yes, there are the realities of the society that we live in, but remind yourself that you are society. You are just as much part of it as the next person. So how can you make the decision to make the effort to show up, to try to change the world, and ultimately recognize that we really are all connected and the ripples are felt across the board.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening to this. I hope that your takeaway wasn't that Daisy's a selfish, annoying girl who just talks about herself, because that was my fear, and I know that's not true, and it sounds absolutely ridiculous to say. And I think, just let yourself be where you are. And my final thoughts are, think of your favorite musician and think of them on stage at a music festival where everyone's singing along. The musician's probably singing about their experiences, or they're singing about things they're drawing from their lives, and you would never call them selfish. Them allowing themselves to feel through the art of music is allowing all of their listeners to do the same. So isn't it the case that anyone who allows themselves to feel, whether that's just in life, whether that's through some sort of career, aren't you just creating space for others to do the same? And isn't that the most impactful way to make people feel and to wake us up from being numb? So those are just my thoughts on that, because life should feel exciting. Maybe we have 50 years left. Maybe we have less. Maybe we were lucky and we have more. We just don't know. And I think that is meant to be said for the reason of each moment is cherished. And I think when we feel numb, it's harder to cherish each moment. But when we are actually feeling, we're able to really cherish each moment. So I hope that you're able to cherish each moment today for the rest of this day, whenever you're listening to this episode, and hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did enjoy it, let us know. If you have your own ideas sparked from this about things happening in your life, we're still doing the community series on Thursdays. So you can always email us at info@livelifeumpotted.com. We love hearing from you, and we want to continue to facilitate this conversation and uplift other voices as well, because every voice that is open to feeling and vulnerable is going to impact someone. So we would love to hear from you for that reason, so that you can impact others and impact yourself. And that's the circle of life. So we appreciate you. Thanks for being here, and we will catch you on Thursday.